both the router and the other piece, whatever it is, have been replaced. So hopefully I won't have technical issues again.
Awesome. Maybe our technical issue days are over.
All right, and let's hit record.
And I do hear that feedback. So
Yep. Shut that down. Okay, here we go.
awesome.
Welcome, welcome. It's been a hot minute since we've been here.
It is. It's been a busy summer already.
I know. I had hoped to planned on spending most of the summer out at the lake, and that hasn't happened.
Yeah.
So
But
maybe I can get there before it gets cold again.
yeah. Yeah. Hopefully. I know. Same with live right on the coast, and it's like I would like to be at the beach every day, but that's not even happening once a week. But there's a lot of other good stuff going on. So that's okay.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, it is so good to see you. You look beautiful as always.
You as well. Happy to be back.
Yes, indeed. So after our little break, we have talked about and decided we are going to, I think we've agreed we're going to spend the next few weeks kind of talking about stories, the stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
But kind of in the context of those internal messages and how they can be an authentic value of our own, or they may be something that a parent or an aunt or uncle or grandparent really impressed on us, and at some point it stopped becoming an external message and became an internal message.
Yeah.
And they range. There's so many of those, I think, that are imposed on women. I don't know if you are old enough, probably not, to remember there was a commercial when I was a little girl that was this woman coming downstairs in this slinky evening gown, singing, I can bring home the bacon and fry it up in a pan, and just this idea that women can do it all. They can go to work, they can work 40 hours a week, they can come home, they can cook dinner, they can take care of the kids, they can do the homework, they can keep the house clean, do the laundry, and then be everything that the husband wants them to be in bed at night before they go to sleep, and get up and do it all over again. And all these expectations.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a friend recently about this, and it's like, I don't know. I'm not a researcher. I'm not a scientist, so I don't have hard data behind this. But I would guess that in the vast majority of two-parent homes, that in the evening, most of the time, it's the woman who's cooking dinner. There's probably some men out there that are stepping up and love cooking and love food. But that it's still a lot of that traditional, women come home and the responsibilities of taking care of the kids, bathing the kids. You'd know a lot of this better than I do. You're working with that demographic. So talk to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've definitely seen a noticeable shift over the years working with children and families and being in that field. There are more and more dads being what I call the primary parent, that are doing a lot more of the caretaking and the household and chores and cooking and cleaning and that sort of thing. But I definitely would say it's still very heavily weighed in the other direction. But then there's also been a rise in family members outside of the parents being that person as well. So grandparents now taking
Right.
on parenting again for a second round. And that sort of thing. But all in all, I mean, and again, I don't have hard numbers behind this either, but I definitely just from seeing and observing and witnessing would still see that it's heavily falling on the mom's shoulders for sure. Yeah, and with that idea behind, like, I had never seen that commercial, but it makes total sense that that's kind of what's been modeled for us for, certainly since you were a young girl, and same with me. I had a situation, actually, I was in an appointment with my therapist yesterday, and we were actually kind of talking around some of this, like, whole household duties and that sort of thing. And then the conversation carried on with a friend later on. And so that's been coming up a lot, but we were talking about, again, just that idea of like being super mom, so to speak. It's like, we work and we provide an income, and I understand way back that the women stayed home, but typically they don't now. And if they do stay home, it's because there's typically multiple children in the home. And financially, like with the rising cost of daycare and stuff, it just doesn't make sense. But typically they're working and they're still being that primary caretaker, and they're still doing the cooking and the cleaning. And even if they're not working, understanding that doing the cooking and the cleaning and the grocery shopping and taking care of the kids is way more than a full-time job.
Yeah.
And that oftentimes isn't recognized. I see moms struggle a lot, especially stay-at-home moms with, and I guess this ties into the stories, right? Is, a lot of people treat them as like, oh, you're living this nice life. You get to stay home. You don't have to work. Like, what do you do all day? Like, do you go to the beach? Like, do you do this and you do that? And like, I'm sure that it takes everything in them to like not scream, but I guess, that's where a story can come in, that they're certainly about their worth, and about, that if they're a stay-at-home mom, that they're not doing anything to contribute to the household, that sort of thing, certainly financially, and all of that.
So
but
that's a lot of external expectations. That's a lot of external expectations that are being put on. A lot of, as you're saying that, I just hear one word just ringing back and forth in my head. You should do this. You should do that. Should. I just hear that like, her going, because I've been there, done that.
Yeah.
I should do this. I should do that. And you can't ever do enough. There's 24 hours in the day. If you were awake and hard at it all 24 hours, 7 days a week, you can't do all of it. It's just, you can't.
Right.
And there's no should take care of yourself in that, in that narrative. There's no should. We're learning now in I'm going to say in my old age, I'm learning to take care of myself. I'm learning it's okay to say, no, I can't do this, or I won't do this. I've been trying to tell when I say no to something, not to say I can't, because I could. And that's not genuine to say I can't do this. I say, no, I'm going to choose. I'm going to choose not to do it. Oh, you have better things to do. No, I have other things to do.
Yeah.
I have other things to do.
Yeah.
And, and that's a real shift. And when I started that, there was a lot of guilt around that.
Of course.
It was hard to say, I'm going to choose to sit and read this evening rather than do something that somebody wanted me to do. I'm going to choose to read because I need quiet time for me right now.
Mm.
And that's a difficult place, as we're talking about it, it feels like this kind of this big pile of, and before we came online, we were talking about piles of leaves and branches.
Mm-hmm.
And and maybe we'll just go with that metaphor. There's so many things that I was told, that you were told as a little girl,
Mm-hmm.
that every woman on the planet was told, this messaging. What your role is, what's expected of you, how you should act, how you should behave, how you should think. And at some point, those messages stop becoming external, like a billboard on the highway we pass, and become internal. They become mine.
Mm.
I should look like this. I should be skinny. I'm supposed to be a size 6. I'm supposed to have dinner on the table by 5 o'clock every night. I'm supposed to blah, blah, blah.
Mm.
And I think what I would like to see is anybody who's listening to this or who hears this is to really spend some time trying to identify what those messages were.
Yeah.
What are things that mom said to you when you were little? What are things that dad said to you? What did grandma say to you when you were a little girl? And then kind of hold it up and say, is this supporting who I am? Is this in alignment with my values today? Before we got on, I was talking about, kind of like a pile of, we've all gone out and raked leaves and cut down branches and had, a pile of leaves and branches in the yard. Some of those are mine, and some are things that my parents gave me or my grandparents gave me. My grandmother, God bless her soul, was not short of opinions. And she was very willing to share them, and I still have her voice in my head.
Yeah.
An innocuous one that came up the other day in a conversation with some friends was about driving. Well, my stepdad, who was my dad, was a professional truck driver, and he taught me how to drive. And his thing was, you drive in such a way that you don't impact other vehicles around you. Well, I was a very pensive driver. I was always 5 miles an hour under the speed limit. And he used to tell me, Kelly, go the speed limit. Kelly, go the speed limit. Kelly, go the speed limit. And today, when I'm driving and I look down at my speedometer and it's under the speed limit, I can hear his voice so clear in my head. Kelly, go the speed limit. And I've got cars passing me and I'm like, I'm not going to get a speeding ticket, you are. So, but, what do we associate with that? That's a harmless, just drive the speed limit.
Yeah.
But what of those messages are mine, that are serving and supporting me? And which ones are something that somebody imposed on me?
Yeah.
And I really want to encourage women to try to just, look at that pile of leaves and branches that's in their heart, and separate them out. Take them apart. Take them apart and pull them apart and look at each one and go, is this something that I genuinely believe, or is this something that somebody put on me? And if it's something that somebody put on you, challenge it.
Yeah.
Which, we talked about challenging too. Challenging is hard for women.
Yeah.
That's an uncomfortable
absolutely.
place to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially, where we were raised and taught really not to challenge much of anything, but that women were sort of to be kept quiet and follow male lead and that sort of thing. So, finding our voice and finding the courage and strength to speak up and challenging things can still be challenging for us.
It's scary.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah.
You know,
The other thing is, I think as humans, not even as women, but as humans, we often find safety in the things that we can control, the things that we have control over, sort of like the known. And if we begin to challenge things that we have known for so long, that puts us into an unknown. And that can be really scary and challenging too. That's stepping outside of maybe everything that you've known, or a certain belief that one of the things you mentioned was being told something at 8 years old. Like, that's a lot of years that you've believed this one thing, and that's become truth for you. And to let that go, first of all, to let it go is one thing, but to get on the other side of that and sort of be in that unknown place, that's really challenging too. And I think that's why sometimes it's easier to hold on to these stories and these beliefs, because without them, like they've shaped the person that we are today, which is great. So there's something to be said for that. There's something to be grateful for, all of the things that we've learned and that we've picked up along the way. And being okay with honoring that and knowing that they're a part of our story, but then being able to release things that no longer serve us, can really be challenging.
Yeah. And I'm sure you, like me, have made that the subject and topic of many coaching conversations, both as a coach and with clients.
Yeah.
And in therapy. You mentioned your therapist, and I talked to my therapist yesterday also, and yeah, that came up around, how how we choose to do things today based on the messages we got from parents or grandparents. When you mentioned grandparents parenting today, round 2, and I know that's huge. That happens a lot. I was thinking, so grandparents grew up in, like, my grandparents would have grown up in the Depression.
Mhm.
So there was a whole nother mindset of scarcity and
Right.
fear around that they were not, they felt it was their duty to impart that to us.
Mhm.
Don't waste anything because you might not be able to get it back. And just that whole scarcity thing. But and they grew up with that patriarchal system of roles and responsibilities and the way things should be done.
Right.
So I was like, when you said that, I was just like super triggered. I was like, so are we jumping that generation, that potential possible growth of progress? And now we've got grandparents that are going back, 30 years, 40 years and teaching kids what they grew up believing.
Mm.
It's hard for me to believe it's sitting here in 2022 that we're still having this conversation about,
Yeah.
it just blows my mind. I was like, you would think that we would have figured it out by now.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, change is slow.
Yeah.
Change is slow for sure. Yeah, and I think that we all just have to sort of do our part, and it really starts with us, right?
It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how many times have we talked about just learning to be instead of do?
Mm,
We're human beings, we're not human doers.
right.
And, like going back to that idea that if we were awake and hard at it 24/7, we still couldn't do all of it. And there's no time in there to be.
Right.
To just be who you are.
Right.
And, so as we're wrapping this up, and I know you need to go and I do too,
Mhm.
I just want to encourage anyone who hears this to really, really examine and look at, be willing to challenge those messages, those internal messages. And if anyone needs support in sorting those out, because that's some choppy water to try to sort those things out. What is mine? What is imposed on me? And then we have the whole issue of, if I recognize that this was imposed on me and I choose to abandon it or choose to not live like this anymore, am I disrespecting my dad, my mom, my grandmother, my grandfather, whoever put this on me?
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother layer of emotions that we as coaches can help someone work through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was an important point to mention too, is these stories can be charged so much differently depending on where they were picked up, what point in time they were picked up, who they were picked up from.
Yeah.
Which can make certain stories more or less challenging than others as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I liked your advice about really just kind of digging into whose stories they are, just starting to build that awareness. I think sometimes we forget that there's so much power in awareness.
There it is.
We can't even begin to make change if we're not aware of where the issues lie, right? So I think oftentimes in creating change, we get stuck in the how, like, how am I going to do it? When is the unknown going to become known? And sort of that gray space. But I think if we can kind of slow it down just a bit and focus on the awareness first, and just really getting curious, digging into things, that kind of gets the ball rolling for sure.
Yeah. So I think we'll continue this conversation over the next few weeks.
Yeah.
And,
There's
again, invite
a lot
anybody who
here.
I'm sorry.
I said there's a lot here. So yes.
Anyone who has, you know, who's really been touched by this, you know, feel free to reach out to either Jessica or I. We're both available to love and support you in your journey.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you. And I am going to end the recording.